Hello, I'm Veronica Waters, anchor and reporter with WSB Radio in Atlanta. Welcome to the Atlanta Press Club Louder Milk Young debate series from the studios of Georgia Public Broadcasting. This is the general election debate among candidates for Labor Commissioner. Let's meet the candidates for this debate. They are, in alphabetical order, Emily Anderson, a libertarian, works for a local publishing company. Will Bodie, a Democrat, serves in the Georgia House of Representatives for District 62. Bruce Thompson, a Republican, serves in the Georgia State Senate for District 14. And now let's meet our panelists. Zachary Hansen is an economic development reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. And Christy Swartz is utility and energy reporter for E&E News. For complete rules on today's debate, please visit the Atlanta Press Club website, atlantapressclub.org/debates. Now, to start the debate, each candidate will be asked one question. Candidates have 60 seconds to answer each question. Christy Swartz, you get the first question to Bruce Thompson.
Hello, Mr. Thompson. There's wide-ranging speculation from economists that the U.S. will officially enter a recession within the next 12 months. Georgia's unemployment rate has been low, but certainly, should we enter an extreme economic downturn, the Labor Department will be the first place those out-of-work Georgians will go. As Labor Commissioner, this would be the first big test for you and your office. Now, you've criticized the department for its performance during the height of the pandemic. So what can voters expect if the agency's under your helm?
Well, thank you very much for that question. It's pretty clear that everyone understands that the Department of Labor has had some challenges. First thing we'll do is, obviously, we're going to cultivate an environment to make sure that agency is responsive and responsible fiscally, as well as with the people of Georgia. We need to modernize that agency to make sure that, listen, crisis management is not to wait until you're in a crisis, it's to manage it prior. So we're going to go in and we're going to make sure that we're efficient in what we do, and that when people do have claims, they're effectively and efficiently responded to. We're also going to handle them with respect. We're going to make sure that people call in or reach into the agency, however they contact us, that they do get someone and that we're very quick to respond and get their needs met. In addition to that, we're going to make sure we have follow-up for them. Listen, we're going to make sure the Department of Labor is ready for the next challenge that's facing us.
Thank you. And Zachary Hansen, it's your turn to ask a question to Will Bodie.
Hey, Mr. Bodie. I'm going to ask the same question. What can Georgians expect if you are to lead the Department of Labor if unemployment is to increase?
Thank you for that question. What they expect from my administration is an administration that's going to be accessible. As a state legislator, I took those phone calls from constituents across the state of Georgia that could not get anyone on the phone with the Georgia Department of Labor. We had citizens and our seniors that were contemplating how they were going to pay for their prescription medication or how they were going to pay for their light bill. We had citizens that were contemplating suicide because they did not know how they were going to pay their bills on Friday. So as the next Georgia Labor Commissioner, as my dear friend, former Labor Commissioner Michael Thurman stated, I'm going to be reactive and not proactive. And so what I'm going to do is make sure that we are being proactive and taking care of the problems that lie by making sure that the Department of Labor is fully staffed. Right now, this Department of Labor has only 1,100 employees. I will go back to 4,000 employees like it was before when Michael Thurman was Labor Commissioner.
Thank you. And now, Christy, your question for Emily Anderson.
Ms. Anderson, the same thing. How are you prepared to lead this agency, and especially now that the role of Labor Commissioner has been elevated since the pandemic?
I'll be honest, there's not much more I can add, considering it's pretty much the same thing, adding in that personnel that is so desperately needed. I know I've had to deal with the Commissioner of Labor's the Department of Labor, and it's really just trying to get someone on that phone, especially when you aren't able to go through and do what you need to do on the website, which you should be able to do. So adding that personnel, working with those within the department. If I got to get my hands dirty, I will get my hands dirty. Get down into that nitty gritty and help out, answer phones myself. As far as getting that personnel, there is no reason we shouldn't be able to hire anyone, whether they answer phones at their house or come into one of the career training centers. And really, so long as they live within the state of Georgia.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. That concludes the first round of the debate. The candidates will now ask a question to an opponent of their choice. Each candidate will have 30 seconds to ask the question, 60 seconds to respond, and the candidate who asks the question will have 30 seconds for rebuttal. By random selection, Emily Anderson, you may ask the first question.
Believe it or not, I don't actually have a question.
You don't have any questions for either of your opponents?
I do not, unfortunately.
Okay, that has got to be a first. Bruce Thompson, you get the next question.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. My question is my friend, William Bodie, over here. With the state of our country and Georgians suffering under the pressure of high inflation, gas prices, the cost of living, and rent soaring, do you still stand by the Joe Biden and Stacey Abrams administration and their agenda, and would you support them if they run in 2024?
Thank you for the question. I would say that I would support anyone that's elected into office at the state level as governor and at the presidential level. And I would say this, and I know what my opponent is trying to do. I would make sure that we have living wage paying jobs for all Georgia citizens. So you don't have to go from job one to job two to make ends meet. One of my dear friends that works in Fort Wayne Technical College, he said, William Bodie, if you can train a worker to build something, to fix something, or to move something, you will always have living wage paying job opportunities. So as far as inflation is concerned, I want to make sure that living wage job opportunities are there to meet whatever economic crisis that this country and this state may be going through. And so I would say to you, Senator Bruce Thompson, that I would be prepared to work with the federal government and the state government to make sure living wage job opportunities are there so we can get through any time of inflation back onto economic prosperity.
Now your rebuttal.
Well, by your lack of response, Mr. Bodie, I have to assume that means you're going to support the high pressure, the out of control inflation that all Georgians and frankly all Americans right now are suffering under. Instead, I would rather we say that we want to be Georgia. And Georgia is #1 place in the country to do business with low taxes. We don't want to be California, we don't want to be New York, and we don't want to be Delaware. So as a Georgian, I'll fight each and every day as an ex-labor commissioner to make sure that people have the right to live in a safe and productive state.
Thank you. And Will Bodie, you get the final question.
So, Senator Thompson, back in the beginning of March of 2020, you were exposed to COVID-19, but you still came to the state capitol. Then after testing positive for COVID and being hospitalized, you drove to your beachfront house in Florida. The local sheriff in Florida ordered you to leave the state. And then the Georgia General Assembly had to suspend legislative session on March the 12th. Do you think that your reckless and dangerous actions harmed the people and businesses in Georgia and Florida?
So I appreciate that question and an opportunity to clear the record. First of all, you're correct. I did have COVID. It was before our state was shut down, and I did not come down to the Capitol. I went into the hospital and, like many other families, suffered. I had an oxygen level of 41 and nearly died. You were released from the hospital, or I was released from the hospital after COVID had cleared. 2 doctors asked me and actually advised me to go down to Salt Air because I have asthma to my vacation home and confine in 14 days, just like the law requires. Constitutionally, I can go to my home. The science says that's what needed to happen, and I did that. The sheriff that you're talking about that responded was under an FBI investigation at the time, and coincidentally is now renting the home that we have. So the truth of the matter is, I followed the science. I did not come to the Capitol with COVID. That was another senator, and I followed all the guidelines that I was given.
The fact remains that you were ordered to leave your beachfront property, which most Georgians don't have a beachfront home, 9 days into a 14-day COVID-19 time frame where you should have been quarantined. And the fact remains, Bruce Thompson, that you came to the Capitol and you actually were on the voter rolls 4 days when you knew that you had COVID, and you spoke to one of your Senate colleagues that told you to go home on March the 10th because you look visibly sick.
I'd like to respond.
You had your opportunity to address that question. If you want to take it up, we can. as we go forward. That concludes our second round. For those just joining us, this is the general election debate between candidates for Labor Commissioner. We will now go back to the panel to ask questions to the candidate of their choice until we run out of time. As a point of moderator privilege, I may also ask questions of the candidates. I will determine when a rebuttal is appropriate. Zachary Hansen, you get the first question in this round.
My question will be for Representative Bodie. Among the Labor Department's responsibilities is operating career centers across the state.
Yes.
You've said you've wanted to open up more career centers.
Yes.
How do you plan to balance that responsibility with bolstering the state's unemployment benefit program?
Well, first of all, I want to modernize the Department of Labor, but also I want to staff up the Department of Labor. Right now, as I stated before, we only have 1,100 employees. I want to get it back up to 4,000 like it was under the administration of Michael Thurman. Also, I want to make sure we have a career center in any county that has 25,000 residents or more. Right now, we have about 42 career centers. We had 83 under Michael Thurman. I want to get back to those levels because we were able to get through an economic recession back in 2008, 2009 because we had the staffing and because we had the career centers. And the importance of the career centers are twofold. One, they provide living wage paying job opportunities for the citizens within that county, but also it is a job creator in and of itself. The Career Center is going to provide jobs to local residents within that particular county. So I know I can balance the career centers and expanding them by also providing living wage opportunities for Georgians in that county and also employing them within the job.
Thank you, Mr. Bodie. Christy Swartz, next question to you.
Hi, Senator Thompson, sir. So I can only imagine how challenged morale is at the Labor Department after the past few years. You talked about in your platform that you want to take more of a business-like approach. That is something that the Labor Department needs. So how are you going to improve the culture at the agency and boost morale among its employees, especially now that you know that there's going to be economic challenges ahead?
Again, thank you for the question. I'm the only one on the panel that I understand has the experience as a business person, has started many companies or taken companies and turned them around. When you turn around an organization, you go in and do your due diligence. There are some good people that work in the Department of Labor that have lived and continue to work through some very difficult times. The lack of leadership that's at the Department of Labor right now needs to change. And so some of the first things you would want to do is go in and listen to the employees. You want to listen and find out who wants to be a part of an agency that is going to be on the forefront of being responsive. Who wants to be a part of an agency that wants to change and actually cultivate young people coming in and being fostered through maybe a fellowship program? Who wants to be a part of an agency that's going to be highlighted by the media for being responsive and prepared for the next angle? That's what you want to do. You want to go in and listen to the employees that are there.
All right, I'd like to ask a question of all three candidates, if I could, if we could maybe get 30 seconds to answer. Senator Thompson, I do want to go back to the issue that you said you wanted to address just a moment ago. Did you get your wrist slapped in the middle of that COVID-19 infection? Were you sanctioned by the state legislature? And then I'd also like for the other candidates to tell me if you could give us a grade on how well the Department of Labor did handling the COVID-19 pandemic challenges.
So I did not get sanctioned from that. Our governor, it was on a Thursday. It's when I first noticed that I had a fever. It went to 99. I decided to stay home for Friday. It was that Friday that the governor said, if anyone is running a fever or notices that they have COVID, they're to stay home. My opponent that is trying to characterize me as someone who is not responsive and reckless is reckless in his actions and accusations. We all know the truth of the matter. The matter is, COVID was something we didn't know. I followed the guidance of our professional medical staff.
All right, that is time. Mr. Bodie.
Yes, I would like to respond. My opponent is reckless. Even the sheriff said that he was irresponsible by coming to his beachfront home in Florida when he knew he had COVID. Also, I want to give the labor commissioner an F. The current labor commissioner, Mark Butler, did not do his job. The employees within the Department of Labor have been working very long hours, very hard, and working and doing more with less. So I applaud the employees with the Department of Labor because they're telling me, they're praying, William Bo, we need to get you elected because we know you were raising morale within the Georgia Department of Labor.
All right, and that is time. Ms. Anderson, your grade for the Department of Labor addressing the COVID-19 challenges.
Not good. Only from having to deal with it myself. I know with my husband, he was employed, he was not getting the hours he was supposed to, so the employer filed on behalf of him. They actually did great. He got that within his first paycheck. My sister, all this is anecdotal, like I said, my sister, it took her months to be able to cash in on those benefits, and her entire industry was actually shut down by COVID with what she does. And even still, I've got another friend who ended up getting overpaid, and they wanted money back. So they definitely dropped the ball.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. That is time. Senator, I did not hear your grade for the Department of Labor. Could you address that quickly?
So I'll give them a C-. The reality is I'm not an armchair quarterback. The leadership failed miserably, but there's a lot of staff there that were working hard and worked overtime to make sure that they could do what they could within the confines of that agency and the leadership.
Thank you. Zach Hansen, next question to you.
As kind of a follow-up, Representative Bodie, on the on the career centers.
Yes.
The technical college system of Georgia has taken over workforce development responsibilities from the Department of Labor, leading to the Labor Department's budget being reduced by nearly 55%. How do you plan to work with a smaller budget and a more narrow set of responsibilities?
That's a great question. So I would say that I would focus my time and efforts on providing the best services we can with the budget we have. Also, this current labor commissioner had the opportunity to go to the Georgia General Assembly on 2 occasions to ask for more money in the budget. And so I would also advocate that we have more money in the budget so that we could do the job of adequately processing those claims in a timely manner. Also, I want more money in the budget so I can staff a call center. So when you call the Georgia Department of Labor, you get a live human being on the telephone. I want to make sure that we have adequate staff, again, because without staff, you cannot process the claims in a timely manner. And so by going to the Georgia General Assembly, I have a lot of course, experience because I'm a state legislative now. I believe that I can get more money in the budget to get the staffing levels and the technology modernized and the career centers expanded to do the job of representing the citizens of the state as labor commissioner.
All right, we've got about 5 minutes to go until closing arguments. So, Christy Swartz, the next question is to you. Let's keep the time in mind.
Okay, it's for Ms. Anderson. As labor commissioner, this would be your first foray into working into government and politics. And you're well aware that your opponents have experience in this as members of the state legislature. So why does your experience set you apart from them, and what sets you apart, from your candidates, from the other candidates?
One of the main things I think is the fact that I am working class. I work as a printer currently. I've worked food, I've worked retail, but I also work with a program where we actually teach this process to rising high school seniors, of all people, where we teach them that legislative process. Not only what laws have to go through in order to become laws, but we also teach them the nomination and elections process through a mock state that we set up for them. And they do learn from city all the way up to state level so far as how these processes work and how they go, including all the state offices, including this one, in which we go over, here's how it is in our program, but here's what you would do if you actually ran for that position. So, well-versed, though not experienced so far as real world.
All right, thank you so much. Zach Hansen, AJC.
Senator Thompson, you've argued the Labor Department needs an aggressive business-style emphasis on measuring performance. How do you plan to evaluate performance of the Labor Department staff, and what will that mean for the department's current employees?
Again, thank you for the question. Unlike my opponent who wants to throw money at a problem instead of going in and evaluating the effectiveness and efficiency like all small businesses have to do and work within a confine of a budget, my opponent wants to turn around and just balloon that department, a department that has not been very responsive with the taxpayers' money. I plan to go in, as I said before, and immediately start doing a listening session. Let's evaluate from top to bottom the effectiveness. Let's move to technology and modernize like many other states. Then let's move to effectiveness of how many people do you truly need to be able to do what you're trying to do. while we're trying to then also reduce the cost of it. When you bring technology in, you don't need to balloon this staff. The whole purpose of bringing in technology is to become more efficient and more effective. And every business person out there that hears this knows that's how you become more effective and bring money to the bottom line. In this case, let's be more efficient.
I think we need to give Mr. Bodie an opportunity for, Representative Bodie, an opportunity for rebuttal.
So again, my opponent has political rhetoric and not any results or any solutions. The Department of Labor fiscal budget from 2023 was cut from $117 million to about $52 million. My opponent wants to cut that budget even more. How much more can we cut from the budget of the Department of Labor? How can you adequately serve the citizens of this state with a skeleton budget? That's what I'll ask my opponent, Senator Bruce Thompson.
All right, and Zach Hansen.
Would I like to respond? Since I was...
We have time for one more question. Zach Hansen.
For Ms. Anderson, you've mentioned that you believe the Labor Department is understaffed and that you want to cut red tape. How do you plan to accomplish those goals?
First off, would be looking at the processes that are used essentially in order to run the department. Where are we repeating steps that aren't necessary? Get rid of those. I mentioned before in another forum I was doing that for things like unemployment, the only difference in filing for it should be a little check mark of you either being the employer filing on behalf of the employee or the employee filing on behalf of themselves. And essentially streamlining the processes as well. Again, getting rid of that extra fat with extra steps, making sure it's essentially as simple as possible to go through and work within the Department of Labor.
All right, thank you so much. That is all of the time that we have for questions tonight. Each candidate will now have 60 seconds for a closing statement. Will Bodie, you get the first closing statement.
As your next Labor Commissioner, I'm going to restore trust in the Georgia Department of Labor. Business owners, employers, employees, and teachers across the state of Georgia, trust me. Even the last great Labor Commissioner, Michael Thurman, trust me. As Labor Commissioner, I'm going to restore the trust of Georgia working families by making the Department of Labor more accessible. I'm going to create a call center. So when you call the Department of Labor, you talk to a live human being. I'm going to modernize the Department of Labor. I'm going to fight so women across the state of Georgia will have equal pay. And I'm going to partner with organized labor unions and business owners and the technical college to make sure all Georgians have living wage paying jobs. Now, the reality is, Georgia, you need a Department of Labor that works for you. My granddaddy always told me that you know about a person when you need them in your time of need, how they really feel about you in that time of need. Georgia, I promise you this, as your next Labor Commissioner, I will be there for you in your time of need.
Thank you, Mr. Bodie. Emily Anderson, your turn for a closing statement.
Well, I do not have the experience of my opponents here. It's, again, one thing where I'm going to call on the experience of actually being in that workforce, as well as running a household. I work full time. I run a household with an 8-year-old, a dog, and a ferret, which is complete chaos. And essentially do the best that I can do. I'm a very quick learner. I like to get my hands dirty, as I've already stated, and I am willing to do that in order to help out those that are already staffing the Department of Labor, finding out what they need, because we already know on the surface what the department needs, but finding out what those individuals within the department need, finding ways of getting it even with a stripped down budget, seeing where we can maybe partner with a private entity to be able to service the people of Georgia.
Thank you so much, Ms. Anderson. And Bruce Thompson, the final closing statement is yours.
We can all agree the Department of Labor needs to drastically change. The question is, what kind of change? My opponent, who is endorsed by Stacey Abrams and subscribes to the Biden big government mindset, suggests we need to expand the size of government, in essence, put it on the backs of taxpayers by charging more money. As a business owner and fiscal conservative, I take a very different approach to solving the problem. The agency must work to become more efficient, more responsive, and more effective before asking for more from others. The Department of Labor must transform through technology and transition to become an employment agency cultivating, fostering, and facilitating employment and reemployment opportunities for all Georgians. One of my priorities is to create a fellowship opportunity for young talent that, while working for the agency, will have the opportunity to be mentored toward mastering their soft and hard skills. I'm Bruce Thompson, and I'd be honored to have your vote to become your next Labor Commissioner.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. That concludes our debate. We'd like to remind voters that Election Day is Tuesday, November 8th, and early voting has already begun. Our thanks to the candidates and to our panel of journalists. We'd also like to thank the Atlanta Press Club for arranging today's debate. For more information about the debates they will host this election season, visit atlantapressclub.org/debates. I'm Veronica Waters. Thanks for joining us for the Atlanta Press Club Loudermilk Young Debate Series.